Well, when we first came here, we used to go around the country here. That was after I got back from the Army. And we were up here one day, and we came down the road between the Page Mill Road and Los Altos. And we passed an iron gate which had a sign on it, for sale 1,000 acres. I paid a little over $25,000 for 1,000 acres.
We decided to build a new house there at Hidden Villa, and the planning and the building of our new home was a family affair. When it was finished, all we had to do was move in, which we did a few days before Thanksgiving in 1930. The acquisition of Hidden Villa was probably the most important event in our lives. It had the most momentous consequences for Frank and me, and for our children, and for many, many people of the wider community who have shared our hospitable environment.
She was the spark plug, as he used to like to say, and he was the powerhouse behind it.
Why she went into building a private school, a Peninsula School.
Oh, Peninsula School. That was sort of one of the early memories in my life. They didn't, this is when we were still living in Palo Alto, they didn't particularly like the schools where their kids were going. So they decided, well, why don't we start a school of our own, which they did. And it was in the old Coleman estate in Menlo Park, the old building where the school is still going on, with very much the same philosophy as it had when it was started, I think.
Immigration of Jewish refugees, of course, began.
I was a refugee from Germany in late July and arrived in San Francisco late in August of 1939. I was 16 and a half when I arrived. And one day there was this knock on the door, and there was Josephine Duveneck, who introduced herself and shook everybody's hand, and while she was doing that, she packed my little suitcase with my clothes and said, well, Walter's going to live with us.
It was the first experience for many of these Europeans in living in a place like the Hidden Villa Hostel.
When the Japanese were moved into those detention camps, there was a grave shock across the face of both Josephine and Frank that this should not be happening in a civilized society, and they decided something should be done about that.
They thought that it was necessary to break down the racial discrimination some, so they started this interracial camp with the idea of getting kids of different races together before they had developed too many prejudices. And that's still going on.
Keep it inside the bowl. Don't spill it, don't spill it.
Josephine started the environmental programs 20 years ago, after the first Earth Day in 1970. And we have the rest of the family to thank. The 4 children, with their parents, agreed that it should remain a nonprofit, private place. They explored a variety of ways of preserving it when they decided not to inherit it and keep the land themselves, and finally decided to set up a nonprofit trust. Well, the children learn how they're connected with the natural world, where their food comes from, where their clothing comes from, and they learn to say thank you for those things, that the animals and plants are actually giving them a gift.
The fact that all of the children have been as generous as their parents about the donation of that land for public purposes when they could have cleaned up on it is another indication of how strong the influence of the parents and how it goes on through the family, through the next generations.
Do you think you've been especially fortunate in your life?
Do I?
Yes.
Certainly I do. I've had more of this world's goods to work with than most people. And particularly, I have had a very fortunate time being able to be married to Josephine, which is the most fortunate thing of all.